Hey gang, we are on our way to a very small town in northern Michigan called Isadore. It's a mysterious place. It is a place where there was a nun, a Felician sister, who was killed back in 1907, murdered. They call her the nun in the basement. And we're going to go there and tell the story, so we'll flip it back on once we get closer. Grand adventure, 7-hour drive. See you when we get there. Okay, we're about a quarter mile out of Isadore. We're in the Traverse City area of northwestern Michigan. Beautiful country here, rolling hills. And I believe that is the church straight ahead. There it is. Can't miss it. That is Isadore. Just like you would imagine in a picture book. Storybook. And that is the church that was built over the old church, and the nun was buried in the basement. Holy Rosary Catholic Church, it's called. And there is really nothing else around here but the church and the convent. Very interesting. And the school, Holy Rosary School. And here is the graveyard I see right here. Question is, where do we drive in? I think we come in right here. Let's take a look. It's all fenced in. So I can't say we're in, but we're kind of in. I am betting it hasn't changed much here since 1907, over 100 years ago, at this small church cemetery. When Felician's sister Unina, was here and disappeared. She had come before as an orphan to the church. She was only 9 years old when she came here, and her father had died in a terrible car accident, and her mother went into an insane asylum. And the Catholics were the only ones who would take her, and assumably you get taken in by the Catholic Church in this very remote area. Even now, you're going to grow up to be a nun, so she followed through. She's a very positive, fun-loving woman. and things were going fine. There was the people that were here included the father, the head father. His name was, I'll just say his first name was Andrew. This was a Polish community, and he was kind of the stern guy who kind of kept a kind of an iron fist. Actually, the parishioners here really, I don't want to say they didn't like him, but he just had a very hard personality. And there was a woman who was not a nun, but she worked here as kind of the caretaker housekeeper. And her name, I'm going to use the American name, was Stella. And she had a daughter named Mary who was a teenager. So by the time that Janina was, I don't know if she was in her 30s, but she was kind of one of the senior nuns here. Her and Stella were really at odds, not getting along at all. They had polar opposite personalities, and Stella had really resented many of the nuns, and especially Janina, because she kind of felt they had the easy life, and she was working day and night and doing the physical labors. There was a day that was in August in 1907 that Father Andrew went with the kind of the handyman boy he was a big fisherman. They went fishing, and nobody was really around, and the sisters all decided that it was nap time, and Stella was down there working away in the kitchen. And when they came back, everyone came running to say that Sister Janina was missing. So for that day and the next day, Father Edward was running around looking with everybody else, genuinely wondering what happened to her, and they couldn't find her. So they brought outside people in to help, but no one could find her. And even blocking the roads, bringing a bloodhound in. Now, one interesting thing is when they brought the bloodhound in, that, what are we going to use for Janina's scent? Stella went and got her shoes, but she didn't get Janina's shoes. She got her own shoes to throw the bloodhounds off, I guess. So that was kind of the first sign of something was up. They had searched day and night, and it was said by many people, even news reporters that were on scene, that at night they could hear singing in the swamps in the woods. Thought to be the ghost of Sister Janina. But the Archdiocese, their position was that she had run away, broken her vows. And that she was a runaway. She'd had enough. So 10 years go by. It's kind of like the cold case. And what happens is there's a new priest in town, a Father Edward, young guy. He's all excited to take over this parish everybody's had enough with Father Andrew. They really want to get rid of him. So they finally found a priest who would come in. Nobody really wanted to come here and take control of this convent or this parish. And he was all excited, but he heard the rumor right away. Everyone was like, well, what are you going to do about the nun buried in the basement? See, there had been a rumor going around that she was killed, but nobody knew for sure. So you see the church over there. That is the new church. There was an older church that stood on that site, and it was going to be Father Edward's project and legacy to rebuild the church. But before he would have that undertaken, he had to quell for himself, were the rumors true? And God forbid that the workmen would go into the basement and maybe find a body. So he went down there with a guy named Jacob, who was this is 10 years later. And Stella's gone, Father Andrew's gone, and it's the new guys, they go in the basement. It's a very dank place, only 4-foot high ceilings, rafters, dirt floor, and they start digging around with the lantern. And lo and behold, they're using like a pitchfork for potatoes, potato masher, not masher, potato fork, and they strike something solid. Well, they started digging, and what did they find? They found a skeleton. And they knew pretty quickly that it was Sister Yanina. The corpse or the skeleton was actually kneeling in a kneeling, bent over position, like she was kneeling on the floor, and then collapsed forward, like crunched over on her face. And she had her habit. There were bits of her habit left with the skeleton, and there was also her reddish-brown hair. So it was pretty unmistakable. But really what made it completely unmistakable was the ring that she wore on her finger, which was the ring that she received, as all the nuns do when they make their commitment and become a nun, which is like being married to God. And it was the only ring. It had the same markings as specifically the other sisters that graduated with her, the other 21. So they knew that it was her. And what did they do? Well, they kept it a secret. Now, at the same time, Father Edward had, I'm not going to get into it, but he had an affair with the housekeeper, the new housekeeper, and she got pregnant, so they sent her away. But he had confided in her the secret that he was holding. And they came out here at night, right here, and it is said that they pulled the bones in a box, open box in the sleigh, and they buried the remains unmarked right under this crucifix right here. At some point, the woman, well, I should say the teenager that bore the baby of Father Edward, and thus far it covered up that scandal. The baby was put up for adoption. She spilled the beans, and that's where everything came tumbling down here in this place. And they brought in the police and the authorities and the coroner. And what did they discover? They discovered, of course, they had to come get the bones and fess up, Father Edward and Jacob, their secret. And what did they find? They found with the bones of a fetus, which presumably would be the child of Father Andrew, who it was always rumored that he was having a relationship with Junina, and everything immediately focused on Stella because she didn't have an alibi and she had a motive. Everyone knew she hated Junina. Everyone knew that she was the only one there alone. And they brought her to the jail and they put her on trial. Now in the jail, they really pulled some stunts to try to get her to confess, including putting her in a dark room with the candlelight, a skeleton tied with wires dancing around, and a voice saying, "Why did you kill me?" And masks and other things. But she would not confess. But she was found guilty, nonetheless, and she was sentenced to serve the rest of her life at hard labor. Now there was an outgoing governor, if we skip forward, who was not going to seek re-election. So he didn't pardon her, but he commuted her sentence, and she got out. She did not come back here, not surprisingly. But it is said that she did settle here, not far, maybe I think it was to the south, but she did take a special trip across Lake Michigan to Milwaukee so that she would be outside of earshot of the archdiocese here. And she did confess to a priest there, that special trip to do that she did kill Junina. She did it. Now what's really interesting about this story is there's no proof that, Father Andrew and a lot of, some of these things, but there's an author who wrote a book. I haven't read the book, but I'm going to put it in the link, that did some unbelievable research and really overcame some obstacles, especially with the archdiocese. She went to the archives, Michigan Archdiocese, and when she filled out the paperwork and they asked her what, and by the way, her name's Marty Link, and they asked Marty, okay, what are you researching? And she was honest. She said, I'm going to come here and I'm going to research this Isadore story about the nun in the basement. And they're like, see ya, you're not coming in here. Typical, right? Just big cover up. Even today, over 100 years later. So she continued her research and muddled through it. And she went to the University of Notre Dame in their archives, and in their archdiocese archives, she found she found a lot on this parish. And one of the most interesting finds that she had was there were these coupons that they would give the priests you know, they'd hand them out every week or every month. Hey, here's some recommendations on a sermon, you know, for this week, or here's what's going on. Father Andrew would just use them as doodle cards, grocery lists, this and that. But she found, I think there were hundreds of cards, and she found a card that had a doodle on the back of it that said something to the effect of fetal bones found with skeleton, not brought to the trial, or not, you know, not published. So there definitely was a baby, because that, you know, the fetus part was never, you know, that was never in court. That was never, it was always this rumor. So she found the documentation. You got to give her a lot of credit. And I highly I haven't read her book, and I'm going to, but I highly recommend reading this book. This author really needs to be commended for her diligence, research and resourcefulness. So anyway, we're going to be heading out of here. Just thought I'd give you a look at where this happened, and we'll catch you on the next one. I'm going to head home. Long drive home. Catch you guys later.